Okay, hi Stuart. Thanks for joining us today. We're here to talk about your exhibition that you are showing with us at Zuleika Gallery in Woodstock, Brave New World. And it's a series of new works that you've produced over the past year, your event series and your pathway series of works predominantly. To give a bit of background about you, you originally studied art at Manchester Met University,
Yep.
and then did your MA at the Slade. And you've got an interesting background as well, in that you had a career change earlier in life due to events that happened in your life, and maybe we'll come back to that. But it's really interesting how your background is rooted in the kind of investigation in your work, and how it's developed about how random events and incidents that happen in life can change the course of history, or just change the course of the daily structure of daily life. So I think we should start by talking about the title piece of your exhibition, Brave New World, which illustrates this point beautifully. And I'm just going to share my screen so we can have a look at that. Right, so this is Brave New World. Stuart, would you like to start by telling us about this work?
Yes, I mean, the event works are a collection of moments and incidents that have happened to an author just prior to sitting down and penning the first words of that novel or poem. And it's an idea where individual moments happen to each and every one of us, and it's that collection of moments that allow us to use the 26 letters of the alphabet that we've all got access to, but it's that individual collection of moments and incidents that's happened to that particular author that's allowed them to sit down and to pen these great works. And Aldous Huxley's a great example of this. He's a guy who went to Eton College and went to Balliol College, Oxford, and wanted to be a doctor. He's come from a family of doctors and scientists. And however, unfortunately, when he was about the age of 17, he went blind in one eye, and he was basically told he can't be a doctor with one eye. So that forced him to change his studying to study literature. It also prevented him from joining the army during the First World War, which he tried to do, but again was told he can't do that because of his lack of sight or poor sight in one eye. It was deemed too bad for him to take part in that war, and that one incident is something that's changed him to, you know, I'm not saying he wouldn't have made a great contribution to history as a doctor. I'm sure he would have done, but it shifted him to become this author as a result of this one particular incident. And also it also led on to other incidents where he went off to, during that period of the Second World War, he went off to study, to work at a chemical plant in the northeast of England. And it was whilst he was working in that chemical plant and within those very controlled environments and restricted movements, and everything was overseen for the safety of the workers there, of course, and also for the integrity of what the work he was doing. But that idea of a controlled state is what led him to consider the major thrust of the novel Brave New World. And it's just a real clear example of how singular moments and incidents that happen to people lead them down these roads to sit down and write a great novel like Brave New World. And what I like to do with these individual moments and incidents, that the colour balls within these event works, I kind of try to reference singularities by having them on each individual little plinth or tile within the work, and to sit, but they all come together as a collective also. So it's the collective is important, the patterns within the work is important, and the colours are there to maybe hint at, positive things, negative things, small things, very big incidents. and it's the collection of these things coming together that allows that author to grasp those 26 letters that we've all got access to, but we haven't got access to those life-changing moments in our lives that lead us to write Brave New World. But there's nothing to say that we can't write our own great novel as a result of our collection of incidents that happen to us.
Absolutely, and in a way, these works are your own visual, representation and your own novel, aren't they? In the way that it's kind of a reflection of what happened to you earlier in your life. I don't know if you want to touch on how you came to change your career to become an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's it is moments and incidents that cause you to also not just that change the way you think, but also cause you to reflect on what you're doing in life. And I spent 12 years in the Metropolitan Police Force, where I worked several years as a normal sort of beat cop, and then went off into the crime squads and the CID, investigating major crimes, and dealt with lots of many different incidents of people who needed help in their life and who were struggling or had made wrong choices in their lives because of the circumstances of their own incidents. But also the thing that shifted my life was when my appendix burst, and it being confronted with my mortality for the first time. I looked at everything within my life, from the work I was doing, people in my life, and what I really wanted to set out to achieve, and to really to try to achieve something in life. And I'd always wanted to go and study art, and even down to the time when the National Lottery first started, people always said, "Well, what are you going to do if you win?" And I always said, "I'm going to go to art school." And that confrontation with my own mortality made me think back to that and think, well, if that's what you really, really wanted to do in life, then can you do it? And I was fortunate enough at the time to have a little bit of positive equity in the house I bought in Cheshunt, and it allowed me to pay my way through college and go and chase after that dream. And I suppose the advantage of also going into to study art into university life as a mature student, I had a very strong sense of direction of what I wanted to do, and also great sense of the opportunity that it was to go to university, which I'm certain as an 18-year-old lad going off from college, I wouldn't have had that drive and that also fear of failing, and you must grab everything out of this because somebody else will be taking everything out of the course and maybe get the opportunities that you could have got if you really put everything into it.
That's really inspiring, Stuart, I think, to hear about your determination and your motivation behind pursuing your career as an artist. And you've obviously become extremely successful in what you do, and these works are really incredible when you see them in real life as well. They're I wonder if we could go back to your process here. I know that they're extremely labor intensive, and we're so delighted that you've managed to find the time in the past year to put together this body of work for the exhibition at Zuleika Gallery. I wonder if you could talk to us a bit about the process, if we perhaps have a look at the next works in the event series. I'll just flick across to another image, and perhaps we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, Everyone Sang is based on the poet by Siegfried Sassoon, who was a First World War poet. And when I was looking for a source literature, I suppose, to base the work on, I came across this and felt quite moved by it when I read it and then listened to it on performances by people on YouTube and that. And it kind of felt very apt at the moment as we come out of a COVID lockdown, and many people have lost loved ones over the last 18 months or so, and they're still losing people to this terrible disease. It feels apt that I made a work that was about leaving a very, very dark place and moving forward and seeing the light of what might be ahead. And I think Siegfried Sassoon in his poem Everyone Sang captures that beautifully as him and his colleagues were relieved by another regiment, relieved by another regiment. They'd spent weeks, if not months, sat in the horror of the First World War trenches, seeing their colleagues shot and blown to bits. You know, I'm sure terrified at moments as things were dropping around them, bombs were dropping around them and exploding. And to leave the utter horror and depression and sense of loss behind, when they were relieved by another regiment, the sense that they all suddenly burst into song at the relief of leaving that moment of horror behind them. And I tried to capture that with the idea of shifting from dark to light, the darkness of the horror and depression, and then coming out to the colours becoming more clear and more vivid and lighter, and to capture the sense of that's what it feels like for me at this moment as we do come out of lockdown. It does feel like we're starting a new and we're moving away from this dark place, you know.
Yeah, there's real visual representation in this particular work, and you can see how you've looked at the colour study moving from dark to light. There's a duality there, and you hide the letters of the first 10 words of the books or the poem, don't you, within these works?
Yes, I take the first 8 to 10 words, depending on how long the words are, and take the letters from those words, randomly scatter them around the work in an attempt to include the first lines or first line words that the author's penned, but in a randomized form. It scatters them out and points to the fact that they're just letters. Without the author, without the author's life experience, they are just letters. They're a meaningless symbol that only comes together and becomes something important once you add the author to it. So I often feel like that there's a sense of loss or something missing that these individual letters point to. That there's an absence with the works, and it's the absence of the author that's being identified, I think. The pathway pieces are they're I suppose they're almost like a hybrid of the cube piece, which the frontality works, which are a very formal. Frontality works a very formal look at what painting is in terms of surface support and object hood that forms a painting, and there are also there's elements within that work that's very quiet and subdued, and then hints of colour around those works that encourage you to explore the work within the space that you're stood and you're experiencing the work in. And then the event works, which I've just talked about, which is individual moments and collective experiences that come together to influence an author. And it's almost like a hybrid of the two, where there is a formal geometry there that the pathways carve a route through, forming arteries, roadways or pathways through there. And I use colour to identify, in a formal way, the space beyond the two-dimensional surface. So that if you'd imagine a traditional painting is normally, I suppose if you look at modernism, Clement Greenberg described it as painting is the two-dimensional surface, and that's what differentiates painting from sculpture, which is about the three-dimensional surface. But my work looks at painting as surface support and object hood, and by identifying that front flat two-dimensional plane and denying that as being the main place where activity happens, I'm identifying the space beyond the canvas. I suppose if you look at it in a traditional way, it's the space beyond that front surface. So that's a formal look at what these are. But then if you take the more the ideas of the viewer and just people in general stood in front of the work, the idea that we these spaces create different moods, different incidents, different moments, different pathways, different routes to get somewhere, and it kind of, once you start to take those ideas on board, so more of a human approach to it rather than a formal scholastic view of painting. The human element of it starts to look at these works in terms of cityscapes and routes through that, and how different places feel and operate in different ways, and the colours kind of identify these spaces as different spaces, and also give hints of you might feel safe taking various pathways through the yellows and greens and blues, and avoid the red areas, or you want the red areas, and I suppose it opens it up to that interpretation, shifting from a formal look at painting through to the human element that the viewer brings. I mean, I can talk about the work in terms of these cities or these arteries, these atomic levels within a structure, but that's pure conjecture, I suppose, or pure personal interpretation.
I think that's right, Stuart, and I think that there's your work, you're known for fusing painting and sculpture in your work, and I think that what we found so exciting in the gallery is that your works are a real conversation point, and there is a physical interaction with them. I think if we move to frontality, which you just talked about, with the event series, in the relation to the books and the poems, there's a visual lyricism there, and then with the frontality, it's much more formal and about the perspective of walking around the work. So when you get to the front, they are very calm and very minimal, and then you get this surprise and this optical illusion where they change colours depending on where you're standing in the room.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's very much I think with the key pieces is one of the earliest works, well, the earliest idea within the exhibition, and they are very much a formal exploration of what it is to make a painting, and looking at the formal elements of painting, which is the surface support object hood, and also the viewer's presence in that place, because historically painting's been about someone else and somewhere else, rather than you in that moment in a human engagement with something in front of you. The phenomenology of the work, and I was very much trying to engage with ideas around how do I express the here and now, how do I try and get the viewer I'm trying to get the viewer to be aware, to be self-aware of where they are right at that moment, rather than thinking about someone else and somewhere else, and by using the white front surfaces of the cubes, it denies the single point of view, and you can see hints in your peripheral view of the blues or the reds or the yellows and greens, etc., that's in the works, and it encourages the viewer to move around the space, and as you said, there is an optical illusion moment.
And these work on both a domestic level and on huge scales. You've got some really impressive, incredible commissions that you've worked on, where some of these frontality pieces are up to 7 meters in scale. I mean, how long does that take you, Stuart? That must be quite an undertaking.
It is. The cue pieces take forever to make. They're very, very labour intensive. There's a lot of sanding and filling and sanding and priming and then filling again when you find other sort of marks within the wooden blocks, and then priming. Then each in the process of getting the shifts in colour to move smoothly from one to another is a continuous adjustment throughout the painting process. And the majority of the sides, each individual sort of side that's painted, usually has about 6 layers of paint on them, on top of the 3 or 4 layers of primer that's gone on top of all the filling and sanding. So they take a long time to actually get to a place. I did a large piece in Washington DC during last year, 12 months ago, and I genuinely had repetitive strain injury at the end of it, because it was such a big piece.
I think that takes on nicely to your perhaps your new works that you've been working on for this exhibition, which is your works on paper, which is, you know, a much smaller, different way of working, perhaps freer, because they're paintings. Perhaps we can talk about those, and they're a step on from the large pathway work. So we could have a look at these, and I'll scroll while you tell us about these.
Yeah, these one of the things that I really enjoy about making work is when you finish a piece of work, I get a real buzz out of it. I get a real kick out of doing it. I think, oh, this looks really great, and then I go through a process of analysis of what I set out to achieve, what happened that I didn't expect to happen, where it failed, was it a technical, was it a theoretical failure, what was successful within the work. But it's a great enjoyment of finishing a piece of work, and the nice thing about making these works is I can fail with them, because I'm not investing 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 3 months making a piece of work. I can fail with them, and from a working studio point of view, it's such an important part of a studio practice, is being able to try things out, fail, briefly critique why it's worked, why it's failed, and taking the little gems of what's working within the work and moving it forward and trying out new ideas and being playful with it. And these works on paper are very much about that exploration of trying things. There's also a conversation between the works on paper and the bigger pathway pieces. They're playing about with similar ideas of formal shapes being broken up and something, an event happening within that space, or an incident happening within the space, breaking up the formal structure. And it's also I use watercolor, wet in wet techniques, which you can have a great amount of control, but they can be quite free and slightly uncontrolled. You know, almost like unexpected incidents within people's lives are. They're slightly out of control. You're not quite certain where they're going to go, but there's also a great freedom found within that exploration within those slightly looser techniques, and also having a very clean formal structure that these loose things happen, I suppose. So for me, these works are a real really exciting things to work on, and to pull out the ones that I think are working, putting together into a collection of works, and then taken out of those works, as you see within these works, there's a couple of pieces that where the square's almost falling into another one of the shapes, and it's the work progressing and changing within a short period of engagement with it. And they're great fun for me to work, and hopefully great fun for people to enjoy as well.
Well, that's right, Stuart, and I think you're absolutely right. These are, I think they're really exciting explorations. You've captured the energy and also the formality and the random incidents that you investigate within your sculptural 3D works. really beautifully here, and I know that people really enjoy seeing them, and I'm really excited to see where these go next as well. I think we're probably at a point there where we can wrap up, and I'd just like to say a huge thank you to you, and to remind everybody that Stuart's exhibition Brave New World is on at Zuleika Gallery until the 14th of June. We hope you can come and see it. These works really do reward seeing seeing the works in the flesh, in person, and being able to see the works in that kind of 3D way that you can walk around them and get the joy and excitement from seeing them. So yeah, we do hope people can come down, and thank you again, Stuart.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you to everybody, all the staff at the Zuleika Gallery. Yeah, great fun working with you so far.
You too, pleasure. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, cheers.